Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be reviewing a game called Garden Witch Life. Recently, I was fortunate enough to receive a key from the game developer, so thank you so much to them for giving me the key to try out Garden Witch Life. I tried out this game for the very first time on a live stream just recently, and I have some thoughts on it that I would like to share with you all. And with that being said, let's get on with the review. Now, the first couple of things that I want to go over are the platforms it's available on, the cost, and the graphics. Garden Witch Life as of right now is $20 and is currently available to play through Steam, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and through Epic Games. Additionally, Garden Witch Life is fully controller supported on Steam. The graphics in this game, in my opinion, I genuinely truly found to be absolutely beautiful. I liked how soft and almost kind of watercolor vibes that I got sometimes. Some areas were very fluorescent to me, and some areas were more kind of very soft watercolor vibes, and I thought that it was absolutely gorgeous. I was genuinely in love with the very wholesome and gentle art style. The only bone to pick I think that I have with the graphics is some of the coloring and lighting issues. I say that because for my personal avatar, I chose to put on a pretty substantial amount of blush for my nose and my cheek area, and I noticed that sometimes, depending on the lighting, and I know of course this does happen in real life, but whenever I would stand directly in the sunlight, it's like all the blush suddenly disappeared. And then if I stand underneath the shadow, it's like I could see it really, really well. And I could easily just barely move my character, and it would feel like magically either the blush would reappear or disappear. And I didn't really understand why, because you would think that with blush, regardless of lighting, you can see it, especially since I put on, I think, the maximum amount or close to it. This is not necessarily a big deal, but it was something that I noticed that I was very mildly annoyed by. But again, this is an incredibly minuscule detail, and it is not that big of a deal whatsoever. It was just something that I noticed. Now let's talk about the highlights, aka the best parts, my favorite parts that I enjoyed and appreciated about this game. First and foremost, I absolutely loved the character customization. I thought the concept of the sliding wheels for the different colors to get the exact specific shade you wanted for your hair or for your eyes, I thought that was wonderful. This to me is an incredibly important detail to consider when making or playing a game, because by setting up the character customization to be as specific and detailed and as inclusive as possible, tends to feel players feel more emotionally and mentally connected to your game, and makes them maybe want to play even more, because not only could they make their character look like an OC or like themselves, but it also just makes the entire experience so much more personable. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I start to play a game, if I can't really customize my avatar very much, by default, my interest in a game kind of just automatically declines. Not entirely, of course, but it does kind of go down a little bit if I can't customize my own character to some degree, even if it's just a little bit. Another thing that I appreciated about the character customization process was the pronoun options. Currently, as of right now in Garden Witch Life, we have she, her, he, him, and they, them. A lot of the times, they, them isn't even included, so I was very refreshed and very glad to see that it was available. Another small detail that I really enjoyed about this game was the ability that you can swim in the water. Now, sometimes in games, I feel like it's pretty, I would say 50-50 depending on what you're playing. A lot of the times you can't swim in whatever body of water is available, whereas I noticed in the water in Garden Witch Life, I was able to jump right into it and swim around, and I thought that was really fun. Not necessary, but a fun little detail to come across. The next thing that I wanted to go over that I really liked about this game is the fact that you can save mid-game. All too often, I've noticed in games, let's take Stardew Valley for example. If you're playing in-game on Stardew Valley, and let's say for whatever reason or another, you cannot finish that in-game day, maybe you need to get up and go, you need to turn off your game, you would not be able to save mid-day. You would be required to either cancel the entire day by closing out of the game, or you would have to go to bed early to be able to save. Whereas in Garden Witch Life, if you just pull up the menu, you can click Save Game, and you would be able to save at any point and then turn off the game if you had to. This to me is really important because for people with really unpredictable personal lives, or a really fast-paced personal life, whatever it is that's going on for someone, being able to save at any given moment is a really nice and very convenient feature. The next thing that I want to go over is the fact that whenever you're planting crops in this game, you do not have to till the soil. While I don't necessarily mind not having to, it was kind of a plus to realize that it wasn't required, because that saves on time. Let's say again with Stardew Valley, for example, let's say you have 10 potato seeds that you would like to plant. You would have to till 10 individual slots on the soil to be able to plant your potatoes, whereas in Garden Witch Life, all of that is completely omitted, and all you have to do is hover your seeds directly above the ground and plant them, and that's it. The last thing that I wanted to go over that I really enjoyed about this game was the cooking. The cooking I thought was super, super cute. And honestly, in terms of all the different categories that I've experienced thus far with this game, I feel like the cooking section in the beginning had me the most engaged. Personally, for myself, when it comes to playing a game, I tend to lose interest very, very quickly, if I'm being honest. It doesn't take very much for me to automatically lose interest in something or not feel as pulled in or entertained. And regardless of that, as soon as I got to the cooking portion of the game, I was thrilled. I was very into it. And whenever I was walking in between the beaded curtains that May has, I thought that was such a fun thing because the way they move and they flow felt exactly how they do in real life. Whereas it easily could have just been I walked right through it or something, but they made it kind of move like it normally would in real life. And I just think things like that are so cute, and they just tend to make the overall gameplay feel a lot more realistic with details like that. Now let's discuss what I didn't necessarily like about this game and where I feel personally that there is room for improvement. First and foremost, one of the biggest things I found very, very aggravating was the fact that I kept randomly passing out for seemingly no reason, and I really wasn't doing a whole lot. I promise I wasn't, and I would just pass out of absolutely nowhere and not understand why. Not only that, but it would catapult me into the next day and I wouldn't even have full energy. That to me was really, really, really frustrating, and that was probably the number one thing, or very close to being the number one thing that frustrated me. The next thing that I want to go over that I didn't necessarily like about the gameplay was the fact that it felt like the daylight was nearly constant. I personally felt as though the only time that I would really see the sky look anything other than first thing in the morning was whenever my character would randomly pass out, and then I would just be catapulted into the next day, and only for a brief moment would I see the sky being darker. This near constant daylight made the game environmentally feel just kind of odd to me, not necessarily bad or ugly or something, because that's not something that I would be saying here. It just felt a bit strange because I'm so used to seeing in almost any game that I play some kind of day and night cycle, whereas I felt like I really didn't see that. This is one of those details that's not necessarily game breaking or something that would ruin it, but once I realized and I noticed, it was throwing me off a lot and it felt a little weird. The next thing that I want to go over is the fact that the instructions in the game, just overall, all across the board, I felt like were not exactly always the clearest. Sometimes they were, but I found that a lot of the time I was incredibly confused because I found that the directions were not direct and clear enough. The biggest issue for me was the journal. Specifically, if you go to the section where the tutorials are for things like the different tools, like how you use them and what to do, etc., I found the way that the journal was set up and written out for all the different tutorials a little hard to understand. Not impossible whatsoever, but just kind of difficult. I personally thrive a lot more off of direct communication and direct instructions. Ideally, the more specific and the more direct, the better. And having it written in a way that looked like a diary was very confusing for me to try and understand. However, I'm sure there's plenty of players out there that understand directions that way just fine. I personally just found it really, really confusing. And unfortunately, that led me to spend a lot of the gameplay on my stream just being really confused and trying to figure things out. The next thing I want to discuss is the money-making system. Personally, it took me quite a while in the game to figure out how to make any money, how to sell anything, and again, with deferring to the instructions in the game from the previous subject, I feel like I shouldn't have to spend so much of my gameplay and or on a live stream just trying to figure things out, because then at that point, I feel as though I'm not being able to truly enjoy the game and truly relax if I am so stressed out over trying to figure out how to make money and how to do anything. The last thing that I would like to go over today is the map. Now, the map is not the worst map that I have ever seen. However, I do feel like it definitely could use a little bit of improvement. It wasn't impossible to navigate, but personally, I was very lost a lot of the time. I couldn't read it very well. Whenever you highlight your cursor above, let's say, your house, it'll say home. Or if you hover above the general store, it'll say general store, and it'll label that for you. However, there's not much else that you could do. Occasionally there were glitches with some of the characters on the map where maybe they would appear more than once and they shouldn't have. I think the biggest problem though that I've seen in regards to the map is the lack of consideration for individuals that may be visually impaired in some way, shape, or form, or to any extent. Because just imagine being a player, you go to check out the map because you don't know where to go and you don't know how to get to the specific NPC's house or how to get to a certain store. You open the map And then because you're visually impaired and the map isn't as developed as I feel like it could be, you look at the map and you have no idea where to go. I don't speak for anybody that is visually impaired, and if there's anything that you would like to correct me on that I have said, please put it in the comments below so I can be corrected. But I just personally would imagine if you are visually impaired in some way, shape, or form, it may be really hard to navigate that map properly due to how thin the pencil lining is on it and how hard it can be to see the images of the individual NPCs. Yes, you can zoom in, but that can only do so much. Overall, for my final thoughts on the game, I don't think that it was the worst game. Of course, that'd be just really horrible and negative to say. I don't think that it was bad. I enjoyed plenty parts of it. However, I also think at the exact same time, there are a lot of things that could use a bit of improvement. And overall, would I recommend playing this game? I would say yes. However, I would wait until it gets a bit more updates done to it and there's a bit more work done, and then I would go and play. With that being said, thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, and if you haven't already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could. And I will see you guys next time for another video. Bye, everyone!